So get started with the first assignment. So the first assignment, as we mentioned yesterday, we were basically it's just setting up the environment. Oh, great. And installing Node.js and cloning down the a template project that we provide for you. If you go down to where the template is, if you select that and you navigate to it, this is a bare bones Node.js application that we're providing for you to get you started. Okay, it's a trivial server, and also it's a little tiny database test for us to verify that indeed you have configured the database and that you are connected. The server is connected to the database, and we can store data and remove data and whatnot. Okay, just to make sure that you're ready to hit the ground running next week. So you can either fork this or you can clone it. I'm going to start with WebStorm, and let's clone this. So let's copy this and either at the command line, load disk space. Uh-oh. Where am I? Let's see. We are in summer 1, and so let's go up 1, and let's create here. Let's do a Git Clone and that. Yep. So this is gonna pull down the project. It's gonna create a directory for you, and I'm gonna rename it to be something else. Webdev. We'll call it undergrad. So webdev undergrad. How's that? Undergrad summer 1 2017. All right. So let's go in there. And you'll find here a couple things. One of them is a .git ignore. Okay, that's so that there's some piece of information that we don't want to store in Git. For instance, any libraries that we install, they can be installed at any time we want. There's no need to store that on Git. So Git ignore has some entries there so that we ignores a couple of files, a couple of directories. Also, another thing here is package.json. That package.json is describes the package. It describes this application and its dependencies. Right. If we look at the content of package.json, it says that I'm the author. That my Node.js application depends on these 3 libraries. We only really need these 2, Express and Mongoose. We don't really need body parser just yet. And what it allows us to do is to tell Node.js that, hey Node.js, this is a Node.js project. Please install all the dependencies, all the libraries that I depend on. Okay. To do that, we have a command npm. Npm, for those that might be familiar with other libraries, with other frameworks, is the equivalent of Maven in Java. Anybody know Maven from Java? No? Okay. And well, package.json is kind of like the same thing as a POM file, right? POM.xml that describes all the dependencies with other libraries. And when you do npm install, it reads that package.json, right? And it starts downloading all those library dependencies. So this is the first thing that you need to do at your, to get this project running on your PC, right, or your laptop. It's going to copy down those libraries from a centralized package manager. It's the website is here. It's npm.js.org. npm.js.org is where all these libraries are hosted. Right, this is a directory, and you can search for all sorts of libraries that for any topic that you want to do. That you want to work with, typically there will be a module for you library that you can use. Okay, so in particular we're using those 3: Express, Body Parser, and Mongoose. Okay, and I'll explain each one as we go. So so right now it created a couple of things. It created this directory, in particular node_modules. Right, so node_modules is where it stores all those libraries it downloaded. Okay, npm install is smart. It looks at all the dependencies, and if those libraries depend on other libraries, right? It downloads those as well. So it recurses this dependency tree, right? It downloads and installs everything, it compiles them for your particular environment, and puts it all in Node_modules. So definitely we don't want to put Node_modules in GitHub. Okay, that's a lot of stuff in there, binary stuff that doesn't need to live in GitHub. So that's why if you look at your Git Ignore, notice that it has two entries there. See that? Node_modules and .idea. See that? So this tells Git is that whenever you get any changes, just ignore that directory, and this is another directory that your IDE, WebStorm, is going to create this directory .idea. We don't want that either on GitHub. Yes? All right? So that's what it is. All right. What else? Other than that, let's see. What else do we have here? We have a Readme file. That Readme file is just this page right here on Git. Right. So this is this webdev template. This is the Readme file, right? It's GitHub uses it to document your repository, where I tell you how to install this. What else do we have here? Then we have server.js. So server.js, this is server.js. We click on server.js. This is a trivial Node server. You only really need 3 lines of code here. There's a little more stuff here than you really need. Although I'll show you how to work this. We'll do that one from scratch so you get an idea of what it is. So we'll rewrite this just to show you how to do that from scratch. What else do we have here? Then in the public directory, we have an empty directory for your assignment, some startup index file, a startup login page, but really trivial files here to get you started. Here's a placeholder for your project, so you would put your project in here. Some students decide to have their projects in a different GitHub repository. That's fine. That's okay. Even in a separate Heroku instance, that's okay. Just make sure you document that and tell us where your project is being hosted. All right. We are going to assume that it's in this directory, right? Unless you tell us otherwise. All right. What else? This test application is for us to test that your database is working, right? That when you deploy it on Heroku or wherever you're going to deploy it, to make sure that the database is running. So don't touch this. This is how the TAs are going to grade you and make sure that your database is running. Okay. And this is just basically the index page for the website. To start this, now that we did npm install, we can just run the server. So that's node space server.js. So we can run it from the command line, and it didn't blow up. That's good. So I must have the database running already. Okay. If I didn't have the database running, it would have failed. Okay. It would have said, I can't find the database. Okay. And I've seen some questions on Piazza. Why is it not running? Typically because the database was not running. All right. What else? Let's see. Here I'm showing running the server at the command line, although I don't want you to run the server from the command line, right? Especially if you come to ask questions at the TA or myself, do not show me that you're running the server from the command line. All right, I'll show you how you run it from the IDE. Right? You want to run it from the IDE because the IDE will allow you to step through your code, do debugging as your code is live, right? And this doesn't allow you to debug it, right? So make sure you don't do that. Anyway, let's leave that for a second. Now that it's running, I can hit my localhost, localhost 3000. There it is. That's my index page with a link to my assignment, which is empty right now. Project that's empty. This is how your TAs are going to go into your test and check to see that there is a database connection. Okay, they're going to try and hit your database. There, it inserted a message in the database. Right, so that's good. We are connected to a database, and we can remove it. So that's good. The database is running. Right, we are able to insert and remove things from the database. Great. So that's the way it should work when you're deployed in Heroku by Sunday. Okay. What else? Okay, so let's open that from WebStorm. Let me close this project. Close the project, and I am going to open the local directory I just created, and I believe I put it under Annunziato, NEU, somewhere NEU, webdev, 2017, summer 1, there it is, undergrad. This is the one we just created 2 seconds ago. All right, so there it is, the node modules, the public directory, the Git Ignore, everything's there, the server.js. All right, so let's play around with this. Okay, let's start playing around with this. Any questions before I start? So far, everybody good? Yes.
Can you go over how to install MongoDB?
MongoDB. You need to find first the MongoDB Community Edition and download the Community Edition, which they often hide it from you. No, that's fine. Yeah, you can use Homebrew. Yeah. Yeah, so you can install it for Windows, for Mac OS, right? When you expand, it will be a DMG. Right, when you expand it, the typical place to put it, is under user local Mongo, right? So the typical place to put it is here, user local Mongo. So expand it here. You probably need sudo admin credentials to be able to put it in there, and in there will be a directory called bin. Right, there will be a directory called bin. You'll need to put that bin directory in your path, right? On Mac, you can do that by editing your Bash profile. In your Bash profile, you'll enter a line, export path, and here it is, right? It's adding either node modules or bin or some configuration, and I shouldn't be showing any of this. Because it's got tons of my secret IDs. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So anyway, in your Bash profile page, you would add a path export right there, so that when you restart or when you that it will be in your path. So you can start Mongo from anywhere. So you could say Mongodb at the command line, right? If you come to see the TAs and myself, I don't want to see you doing something like /user local mongo bin. All right, make sure that you have that in your path. Yes? All right, make sure you have it in your path. Let's see. Also, at the you'll need to create a directory at the I think it's DB. You need to create a directory off of your root directory, either on a PC or a Windows or a Mac. It needs to be off of the root. /data/db. If you try to start the database without those directories, it'll complain, asking you where is that data, where is that folder, okay? And you'll have to create that folder. This is where it puts your data files. All right. On a Mac, you'll need admin permissions to run Mongodb. All right. So you'll need to run it using sudo space Mongodb and put in your password. All right. Okay. All right, so let's continue here. So one of the things that the package JSON added here as a dependency is express, right? So yes.
Before you go into this, one of the steps of the assignment is that you have to connect Node to WebStorm, and
yep.
If you can go over that. Because I was trying to do it and I couldn't.
Or
something along those lines of like set up Node.
No, when you install Node. Okay, yes. Let me do that. So after you install Node.js, right? WebStorm will know where it is installed, but you need to create a configuration, all right? And this is, you should all have a configuration. So I don't want to see you starting it from the terminal. You can certainly start it from here, node space server.js, yes? And that will work. Actually, no, it won't work. Why not? Oh, because I already have a Node.js running, right? I already have somebody listening at port 3000. Where? Where do I have it? Oh, here it is. I have Node.js running here, so I'm going to stop it. I could run it from my terminal here, Node.js server. So that's legitimate, but I don't want you to do that because this doesn't allow you to debug the source code, right? And put breakpoints and things like that. Yes? I'm sorry? Well, you can have npm start also in debug mode as well, if that works for you. I just want you to be able to run it in debug mode if you need to debug it. That's all, right? And just running it from the command line just doesn't allow you to debug it like that, right? So the alternative is to create a configuration file, and you can create a new node instance. Yes.
I just had another question about Mongodb.
Yeah.
So it's that data /unique directory.
Yeah. You'll probably need to change mod. Yeah. Chmod. Yeah. So here I have several Node.js Node versions installed. Typically, you just have that one version that you just recently installed. Here I have 3, but you can choose the version, and this will put drop down from where it's installed globally, right? And then you need to tell it what file you want to run. In this particular case, would be the server.js. And then you just need to give it a name. So I don't know, you probably call it just server. When you say OK, then you can now run it. Just run it plain run. Or you can start it in debug mode. Right? After you put it in debug mode, you can put breakpoints, right? And it'll stop, and you can look at the variables as it goes. So you'll be able to debug it on the client. You put breakpoints on the client side on the browser, and also you can put breakpoints here on the server. So you can debug the entire stack. Okay, you can step through through everything. So so especially if you come ask for help, please make an effort to first show us that you've made an effort to debug it yourself, right? That you've more or less think that this is where the problem might be, right? And then we can help you, better help you. All right. Okay, so let's run it from here. So it's running, and let me stop it for just a second. So let me start from scratch. I'm going to blow this away, right? Server.js. So server.js, as the name suggests, is that we want to create a server in there, right? And so typically when we talk about Node.js, we all think about, oh, it's just a server, but it's not a server, right? Node.js, the only thing Node.js is an interpreter that allows you to run JavaScript on the command line, right, on a desktop, as opposed to running it on the browser, right? Now, running it on the browser and running on the desktop, it's same language, same JavaScript, same same syntax and whatnot, but it's fundamentally different, right? Of what can you do when you run on a browser, or what can you do on a server? On a browser, you have windows and you have buttons and mouse, and you can interact. You can, you have the DOM. You can manipulate the HTML. You can do all sorts of things, user interface, but you're restricted, right? You don't have access to a database, you don't have access to a file system, you have restricted access to a network. On a desktop, it's kind of the opposite, right? You don't have a user interface. There is no mouse, there is no window, there is no HTML, no CSS, no anything, right? There's no input field, there's no interface, but you do have access to a full-blown operating system, and database. You have access to the file system. You have unrestricted access to the network. So here we are on the server side, and we can just write just plain old JavaScript here. Hello world, hello network, and we can just run this. If we run it, notice that at the bottom it says hello world. So it's us being able to run just plain old JavaScript here locally on our desktop. And certainly we have the full-blown access to the language, right? All the for loops, if statements, and whatnot. But what makes Node.js interesting, and what makes any language interesting, is the community and all the libraries and all the support that the community provides for that particular framework, right? So Java all by itself is not very interesting unless you consider all the libraries that go along with that particular framework. Same thing with Node.js. There's nothing interesting about it until you consider all the other libraries. One particular library that is fairly common is one of the more popular libraries is the Express library. It's the E in main. That E is the Express library. And we can load that using one of Express. One of Node.js's keywords, which are reserved words, is the require function, right? That it's the equivalent of an include, the equivalent of an import, right? You're loading a reference to a library, with the exception that this is giving you this is actually a reference, an object reference to whatever that library is exporting. We'll see how we can export things right from a library. Our own libraries. We're going to create our own libraries, but this library is exporting something, and it's exporting this function that can be used as a constructor. So this would be Express, and we can then use it to instantiate an instance of an application. We can say Express, like that. This is all documented very well documented in the Express website, Express.js, and I highly suggest that you go over some of this material just to become familiar where things might be. You don't have to become conversant in it, but if you have a question about Express, it's just to know where things are, right? Where you might want to search for some of your answers. So yeah, so that's the first two lines that we just wrote. Okay, that creates an instance of the Express library, and then we can start using it. Right, we can create the simplest of servers by just listening at a particular port. Okay, there it is. In 3 lines of code, the simplest of servers, right, that are listening for an incoming HTTP request at port 3000. Right, it's so simple that it doesn't really do anything. So if we run it, notice that Node server. It's stuck in there, right? When we ran console and we said hello world, it ran and it stopped, right? In this case, it never came back. See that? So it's stuck in a loop, listening for an incoming, stuck in a single thread, waiting for an incoming HTTP request at port 3000. But again, our server is so dumb, it can't really do anything yet. If we try to get anything, the server is just going to respond and says, I don't know how to get that. I don't know how to get anything, right? So what we need to do is tell the server what to do when certain requests come in, right? And so we could tell the server, hey server, if you see an incoming GET request, right, as opposed to a put or post or delete, right? If you see an incoming GET request to this particular URL pattern, right? This is what I want you to be able to do. I want you to say. Or do maybe like console log hello world. Okay, so if we restart, we're going to say yes, stop and rerun. If I come back and I ask for that particular resource, notice that it's stuck there. See that? It's spinning. So the server seems to we connected to the server, but the server indeed ran. Notice the hello world, or the hello world. So the request made it to the server, but it's stuck. Right, the client is kind of stuck, waiting for the server to respond. Right. Remember we mentioned yesterday that the underlying architecture of the internet is this client-server paradigm. Right, where you have somebody requesting something, creating a request, and the server then responding with some response. Right. So if the client is sent out the request, we can look at that request by inspecting the network. We can look at the network traffic. Notice that indeed there was a query that went out to the server, but the server says, "Oh, did I restart? Did I restart the server?" Let's refresh. There's a server saying that, I don't know, there's nothing mapped to that path. Wait, why is it hello? Did I map this right? Hello, I'm sorry, hello. Put this down. and put this on the right-hand side. Maybe that's it. So this is /hello. All right, there it is. So here's my hello that went out. Here's the URL that went out as a request, and this is the notice that the response never came back, and it should say pending. Let's see. Yeah, it says pending, right? I don't know. The client is kind of waiting on the server to respond. It never got a response back, but it's still waiting. It'll time out at some point. It'll get tired of waiting. So the server, the client did its part, right? It sent out the request, but the server never did its side, right? It never provided a response. To participate in this client-server architecture, Express provides you two objects as part of the function that handles this request, right? That handles this life cycle of the request. It provides two objects. The first object, the first parameter, represents the request that is coming from the client. Okay, it represents everything here. This, if you click on this, all this information here in the headers, right? The URL, that it's a GET, any timestamp, any cookies, any header information, anything in the body, anything in the HTTP request goes out, the IP address where it's coming from. It's all available in the first argument, okay, of this function. What these two arguments allow you to do is to participate in the life cycle of the request response, right? Of the client server life cycle. Make sense? Right? So here, what we could do is respond and send back a not be rude and send back a hello world from the server. Okay. So if we refresh, notice that the client was still waiting. Was still waiting for this, and actually we caught it. We caught the request being answered by the server. Right, so there it is. So we click on it. Notice that the status is now 200 instead of 404. It found it, everything's okay, and the raw data that came from the server is here. Hello world from server. Make sense? Okay. We could send other information back instead of just being plain text. We can send. We can wrap this in a JSON object. JSON is a JavaScript object notation. So there it is. We on the fly we created a JavaScript object. If we restart the server and refresh, notice that we get back a well-formatted JSON object. Notice that it has double quotes, which I didn't add, right? The send message, the send function here is smart enough to understand what it is that it's sending. Okay, the MIME type of what it's sending, and depending on the type, it will adjust, right, and send the right thing. If you know that indeed you're only sending JSON, preferably you would use a JSON function instead. The send function is a very powerful function. It knows how to send all sorts of things. Notice how it sends images and files and all different types of MIME types. But if you know if it's JSON, then it's preferable to send JSON. Send is it has an overhead of testing and trying to verify what is the MIME type, or guess what the MIME type is, as opposed to JSON just being very specific that I'm always using application/JSON as the MIME type. Okay, it's guaranteeing the data type. What else? Everybody okay? All right. Let's keep going. So we could create all sorts of routes. We call these routes. These URLs that we are mapping, we call them routes. And depending on what you want to send back to the server, you can create all these sort of routes, right? So for instance, for every single file that you might want to send, you could create a route and then read the file from the file system and then stream it back to the server. But that would be very, very cumbersome, right? If you had to write that for every individual file. Instead, we're going to leave this for later. We're going to come back to doing this. Actually, almost the entire the second half of the course, we're going to be doing a lot of this, right? Creating all these routes and sending data back from querying a database, right? And exposing data models to the world, and in particular to our client. So instead, what we can do is go back to the, I don't have the website anymore. Let's go back to Express. And let's create, let's say that instead of me creating a route for everything that I want to send back, right, what I'd like to be able to do is to create a directory that anything I drop in there, any file I drop in there, should be sent back verbatim, right, and streamed back to the client whenever they ask for a particular file, right? Specifically, I want to be able to send back any HTML, any JavaScript, any CSS, any images, anything that is static content, right? Anything that is statically available in the file system. I would like to put it in a public directory. I like to be able to put it in a public directory, just drop it in there, and that's it. Just forget about it, right? And if you ask for that particular file, you'll get that file. Yes? So what this says is that it's telling Express that, hey, anything that is under the current directory followed by the public directory, anything that is in there, consider it to be static content and stream it verbatim to the client. Do not interpret it. Okay? Do not try to run it. Don't try to do anything with it. Just verbatim send it back to the client. And there it is. We have a public directory. So anything you drop in here will be sent verbatim back to the client. Yes? So if we drop here a file called hello.html, and in there we put an h1 hello from Express, a public directory. Okay. If we do that, the public directory will be now the root of anything that you request. Okay. So if we restart that, and you come back here and you go to localhost and ask for hello.html now, right? You get the hello from Express public directory, that file, right? So now this slash is mapped to this physical directory location. Everybody okay? Right? And if I put it under a directory, right, under some directory, a directory called some, and you drag it in there, you can navigate to, if you refresh, now it's no longer there, right? I can't find hello because I moved it onto some directory, right? And I have it in there. So that path now physically maps to a file path in the directory, in the file system. Everybody okay? All right. All right, so, yes?
What happens if you ask for a folder that's empty? Like if you just get rid of the
Yeah, so the default behavior is that if you ask for a folder, right, and there's nothing in it, is that it will, by default, the server would want to send back an index file, right, under that directory. So for instance, if you put an index file here, like the name suggests, right, the index is a special name, right? It's a default file that is sent if you don't ask for any particular file, right? And like the name suggests, it's meant as an index for the content of that directory. Okay, so you would say this is in here. You might say h1 default file. Okay, default index file. So if you go back and ask for nothing, right, you'll get the index file, right, index.html. And you can either ask for it like this, so it's implicit, or you can be explicit, right, and ask for the index file by itself. Yes? All right, awesome. So all right, so let's see. We have a couple minutes. We can get started with the assignment. Let's get started with the well, not next assignment. Let's start playing around with creating a trivial Angular application. All right. It won't get too complicated since we only have a few minutes. Let's create a directory where we can just experiment. Yes.
Question about the setup.
Yeah.
You want us to use the CLI or connect it to GitHub?
You'll probably need both. So you won't need the CLI for a little while. You'll need it a little later. So I would do both. So connect it to GitHub so it automatically deploys. Well, unless you prefer to do it manually, but connect it to your repository. I would suggest that you automatically deploy every time you push. And in the CLI, you'll need it a little later. We'll need to create environment variables and things like that, and we'll need the CLI for that.
So that's not for assignment 1.
Oh, does it ask you to install the CLI?
We have to set it up so the next
hosting
Mongo.
Mongo in assignment 1.
Say again?
It doesn't mention anything about hosting Mongo in assignment 1. That would be like MLab.
So the app just crashes if you don't connect it.
Yes.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh.
So if you just connect GitHub.
Oh yeah, no. We need MLab. Yes, we need MLab. All right, I'll add that. Thank you. Yes, we'll need MLab for the first assignment. Otherwise, it will crash remotely. Yep. Thank you. What was I gonna do? Oh yeah. So let's create a question. The hello HTML. Yep. Here.
Or what was the one we were previously working on where it was like hello world? You put the weight after all the
You put the put the what?
so you put the port, you had a app that was like weight on the 40,000.
Yep.
Why would you put that as the last line? Like where do you want to wait on it before you do it? Where you listen? Why would you listen after the
So first you set up all the various policies. There's a whole bunch, like if you're going to use cookies, sessions, you're going to use. So all that is you're configuring the server, right? After you configure the server, then you tell it that you want to listen, right? And anything that you configure afterwards will not take into effect in the server. So that would happen before, right? Any database connections, any setup would happen before you start to listen.
it seems like you were at one point saying that. Like,
Oh, the routes?
yeah.
Yeah, so they would not actually live here. They would live in a separate module which would be loaded here, which we're not doing that just yet. I was just giving a hello world example. All right. Yeah, we'll do that quite a bit a little later. Yeah. For the first half of the course, the first 3 or 4 weeks, this is the extent of Node.js. All right. It's just going to be like this for a little while. We'll come back to it much later because our client won't have any access to any databases, any file system, so we'll have to expose all those resources through Node.js. Okay, so we'll come back to this, but for the next 2-3 weeks, this is the extent of Node.js that we're going to need. We only want it to be hosting the static content for now. All right, we'll come back to this a little later. I guess I'm not going to get started on the demo. I'm going to leave it here. And we'll come back tomorrow and we'll do the demo tomorrow. All right? All right, thank you.